Starting in the name of Allah, the most merciful, mighty, and gracious to all. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, and welcome to the class of Research Methodology. Students, today we are going to discuss the 14th lecture of the course, and now today our concern is about the measurement of variables. In the last series of sections, we have discussed the different concepts here relevant to hypothesis, relevant to variables, is it, and relevant to statistical notations. Now today we are going to discuss again a bit more about variables. Now our concern is that how we will measure the variables. Up in front of measurement of variables, I have mentioned here operational definition. It means that this lecture will be divided into two sections: the measurement of variables, operational definition, and next we will start clear the scaling method. Now before starting the lecture, let me first tell you that what actually we are going to study. Our major topic is measurement of variables. It simply means that measure, analyze clear your variable, is it, whatever the variable you have. Now we want to measure it. When we want to measure our variables, we need two methods, two techniques. One is known as operational definition and one is known as scaling method. So when scaling method and operational definition combine together, so simply means that we have measurement of variables. So in this section, first I shall try my level best to cover and explain the operational definition under the theme of measurement of variable, and then I'll explain inshallah in my upcoming lecture I'll explain the scaling technique to measure the variable. Students, before starting the lecture, let me first give you an idea that what actually we are going to discuss. If you notice, let me first highlight here, I have mentioned a question here. If you notice that the question is that do you like the subject math? Under this question I have two options. One is yes and one is no. If you like math, so then you have to tick on yes. If you, for example, don't like math, so then clear you have to tick mark clear the no. The question is that what actually we are going to study. If you focus on this question, the question sirf mata sole para dhikr kare de, before starting the lecture I would like to make it clear that what actually we are going to study, that what is basically the meaning of measurement of variable. Now focus on this question. Here if you focus that it is a question that do you like subject math, is it, that is a question here, and then under the question we have two options, either yes, either no. Now if you focus, students, that this question, do you like the subject math, it is a statement, is it, it's a question. How this statement came into being, it is basically the concept of operational definition, or in other words simply we can say that how this question or statement came into being, that came into being through operational definition. Under this question you will find out clear yes and no option. This yes or no option, that is basically came into being through the scaling method. So therefore, as I told you, that when we want to measure the variable, we need first the operational definition, because with the help of operational definition we will make the questions, we will make the statements, and to measure the statement we need some scales, and that will be done through scaling method. So combinedly we will clear then define or construct a question. So here in this lecture we will discuss that once we are going to make a questionnaire, so definitely the questionnaire contains the various questions, and each question will be considered as a statement, and each statement will derive from the operational definition concept, and then each statement will be measured clear through various scaling method. So therefore initially I told you that here in this lecture we will first discuss the operational definition. Operational definition, simply that is a process with the help of which we can make the statements to measure the variable. Operational definition, it basically divide the whole concept variable clear into different dimension and elements. Later on inshallah we will discuss into detail. Now let's start. That why we need for measuring, or what is the need of measuring a variable. First of all, the question is that to test the hypothesis, the variable needed to measure. Let me first highlight it here. Okay, why we need measuring? Because we want to test the hypothesis. And if you remember, I told you hypothesis testification, it is only the testification of the relationship of variables. So therefore, the first requirement, the first need that we want to study, we want to measure hypothesis, and hypothesis contain clear the relationship of variable, therefore we need to measure the variable. Second question, that finding the answers to our question is possible when we say some statistics or numbers. For example, when we want to find out clear for example any of a variable and we want to quantify that variable, so therefore we need to measure the variable again. Students, some of the variables, students, as I told you that sometimes we have some variables which are very much easy to measure, like for example the weight of a person, the height of a person, the speed of a bike, let's suppose the speed of a wind. So some variables are very much easy to measure. Here I have mentioned that these variables are easily measurable, like as I told you that height of a person, salary of an individual, hour worked clear by the employees in an organization, speed of the wind. These are simply the variables which we can directly measure. But we have some variables which we are not able to measure directly. These are basically subjective in nature, or we can say these are basically abstract, clear, or construct in nature. Like for example, the motivation level of the employees within an organization, the success level of a project of an organization, the employee satisfaction, the employee commitment, the employee loyalty. So now the level of motivation, the level of loyalty or the commitment level, satisfaction level, achievement level, is it, level of aspiration, is it, all these are basically what, all these are clear the variables which we are not able to measure directly. So then what happened, we want to measure such variables, we need clear the operational definition method. Hope a bit idea will be clear now. Now if you notice, as I told you that some of the variables, some of the questions, some of the statements that were that clear are very easy to measure. Like for example, if I put forward a question from someone that how long have you been working in this organization, now it is a question which is very much relevant, which is very much easy to measure. Like for example, when I put forward this question from an individual, so definitely individual will reply 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, 3 years, 4 years. Now look at here, that is very easy to measure. Another question, that when I say what is your marital status, are you married or unmarried, the person will simply tell me I am unmarried, is it, again it is very easy to measure. When I'm saying how much is your salary, again it is a question which is very much easy, the person will definitely give me a quantitative term. So it means all these are the question statement variables, is it, like salary, marital status at the variable, working, is it, in the organization, again a variable. So all these are the different variables or different statements which are easy to measure, so we can directly measure, is it. But some variables are abstract or subjective in nature. As I told you, subjective mean that we cannot clear easily, for example, measure it. We don't have the method to measure clear them directly, so indirectly we measure. Indirectly doesn't mean clear that inversely. Indirectly here simply means that we can measure with the help clear of the operational definition and scaling method. Like for example, satisfaction, happiness, achievement, motivation, effectiveness of the organization. Like I would like to explain the whole concept with an example, it will make your idea inshallah fully clear. So one cannot simply ask what is the achievement motivation level of your employee. Look at here, the achievement level of employees within an organization, or the achievement motivation level of employees within an organization. I can't say that I am 20% motivated. I can't say that I am, for example, 90% motivated. No, to some extent I am motivated. At most I am motivated. Almost I am motivated. I am very much motivated. Now look at here the different terminologies I am using. I am very much motivated. I am very much motivated. I am absolutely motivated. These are clear. Yes, I am basically measuring clear the motivation level. Lekin this motivation level is actually abstract in nature. Such kind of variables clear are very much difficult to measure. So therefore, for such variables which having abstract nature, so then we use the operational definition method. But before we start measuring the variables, its abstractness needs to be addressed. How we have to address this thing? Now let me explain with the help of an example. Suppose, for instance, example that thirst is it? For pyas. Thirst cannot be seen, but we expect that a thirsty person would consume lots of liquid. Hence the behavior, the action of 30% is that he would drink fluids. Is it? He will definitely take a liquid. Like for example, they are thirsty. Thirst that is a variable. Lekin direct measurement measure. Definitely we will measure clear its consumption quantity. Whatever the liquid clear the person, the individual will consume, we will get an idea from his or her consumption of liquid. So if several individuals, let's suppose say that the thirsty or the thirst, we can measure thirst by measuring their consumption of liquid. Also the concept itself is abstract. Maha concept I told you thirst da bazati khud yo abstract de sexual yo subject to nature variable de. No directly they measure kawale ne chama, lekin they indirect tarike sara measure kawale chama zugurama che yo kas chikam de. Let's suppose aga 3 glass of buski and the another person he will take for example 4 or 5 glass of water. So it means then I can indirectly get an idea that the person who, let's suppose, took the 5 glasses, is it, who drank 5 glasses, so it means that person was more thirsty. Lekin by thirst clear this variable is abstract in nature or subjective in nature, we can't measure it directly. So therefore to measure such indirect variables which we don't have a method clear to measure them directly, so then we need clear another technique, another type of technique, that is which is known as operational definition technique. So reducing abstract concept so they are measurable is called operationalization. As I told you, that method or methodology to measure clear such variables which are subjective in nature, that technique is known as operationalizing technique. Operationalizing technique that is a rocket science simply stated that way. Come your variable abstract in nature, they subjective in nature, they directly we cannot measure directly. So okay, it must be split up into different dimensions, and then each dimension must be split up into different elements. Or how your element statement question jode. Simply this technique is known as your operationalizing technique. That was the inshallah explain them kama your example sara, it will make your idea inshallah fully clear. Operationally defining a concept mean a construct, a variable, like in that variable which is subjective in nature, so that it becomes measurable is achieved by looking at the behavioral dimensions, is it, facets or properties represented by the concept. Da maga khabara kai chugura har yo operational definition chikam method de sayshura har yo aga variable chikam yo concept de yo subjective type variable de sanga I told you, like motivation, is it, like satisfaction, like commitment, like loyalty, aspiration sayshura da tool chedi da tool sa so sara construct diya concept si. So those variables must be divided, split up into different dimensions, and each dimension must be divided into different facets or elements with the way. So that's a concept there, that's a method there. This method is simply known as your operationalizing method. Hope inshallah that also some laga idea clear shui. Now I have taken this definition from the book operational definition sanga explain kai that operational definition is a statement of the specific dimensions and elements through which a concept, a variable, a subjective variable will become measurable. You got a definition that way. So operational definition means a method with the help of which we will definitely measure those concepts, those variables which we cannot measure directly, with the help of or splitting it up into dimensions and elements. मतलब operational definition आगा टेक्निक दा चे कम के मुंगा यो वेरिएबल डिफरेंट डायमेंशन और एलिमेंट्स के स्प्लिट अप को टुकड़े टुकड़े को सही हुआ और हर यो एलिमेंट माने मुंगा वी विल मेक क्लियर सम स्टेटमेंट्स is it to measure such concept or variable. So this technique, that with the help of which we will measure a concept into dimension and element, so that technique is known as your operational definition. उस अंदाज़ा चिकम दे सही दा बज़ तासुला यो एग्जांपल मन इंशाल्लाह क्लियर कमा, it will make idea fully clear. गोरा दा यो एग्जांपल बज़ कंटिन्यू कमा. The operational definition of learning. गोरा I have taken a variable here, and that variable is learning. That is among a major variable there, and it is learning. Ab learning could be stated as the ability to recall the lesson. Is it? Learning matlab dada sexuality, it is the capacity to recall, sexual to memorize the lesson. It is also the ability to apply the lesson. Is it? Learn to a practical situation. And finally, it is the understanding of a lesson. Look at this definition. अब जमा सारा मेन चीज़ फॉर एग्जांपल अगर लर्निंग यो वेरिएबल दे सही एम्प्लॉय लर्निंग की देशी, चाइल्ड लर्निंग की देशी सही एडल्ट लर्निंग की देशी सही वट एवर, लेकिन आवर मेन कंसर्न दैट इज लर्निंग सही गोरा. लेट मी फर्स्ट हाईलाइट हियर द हाईलाइट कमा गोरा जमा सर चिकम वेरिएबल दे, दिस वेरिएबल इज लर्निंग. अब असल के लर्निंग से लर्निंग इट इज द एबिलिटी टू रिकॉल द लेसन. Is it? Second, it is the ability that practicality. Is it? Whatever I have learned, I have to practically apply it. The second, for example, dimension. Or third dimension is that is understanding of a lesson. It means गोरा learning चिकम दे अगमा द्रे हिस्सों के द्रे dimensions के तकसीम करो. Is it? The recall the lesson and practicality. Whatever I have learned, practically I should apply, and that is my understanding. Now, Gura, next, with some effort, we can define what is meant by understanding. It means the ability to answer the question. उस शिकल है तो for example, further elements के रावलमा, so अवल element से दे सही that is Gura understanding की वही लगे सही. The next is the ability to answer the questions correctly and give appropriate answer. तो Gura दा मासरा यो element शो सही और द give appropriate answer second element show. Now we also define what is application. मतलब practicality संगदा. A practicality I would like to divide clear into further elements, which is the ability Gura to solve the problem by applying the lesson. Yo the element show. Is it? Learn and integrate it with other relevant material, and integrate chikam de सही da yo next element show. Now we are in better position to measure the concept learning. So what I did, initially learning चिकम दे आमा three dimensions की तकसीम करो. हर यो dimension चिकम दे सही आमा different elements माने तकसीम करो. Whatever the theory I have explained here, सही diagram नजर तासुला explain को मैं, it will make your idea fully clear inshallah. At this stage we can develop questions. उस चिकला once all the dimensions and all the elements which I have mentioned, these are clear. No bite per har yo element mane, now we have to develop the questions, and these questions simply means that these are the statements जो शुरू के मकम तासुला हुए सही हुआ. So the statement, the question is संग जुड़ेगी. Is it? So that method, that where we first took, is it a concept, a variable, a subject to nature variable, we define clear, we divided this variable into different dimensions, and each dimension then clear split up into different elements, and then upon each element we'll develop the question. So this technique, this method is simply known as your operationalizing method or the operational definition method. Us अंदर concept I would like to explain with the example, with the diagram. As I told you that I took a variable, and that variable was simply known as my learning. Now the C means that it is your variable which is known as construct, which is known as concept. Is it? So now learning is a variable which we cannot measure directly. Directly is a nation measure ko wale. So learning is what? Learning is my concept, or it is a construct. Matlab it is a subject to nature of variable. So now gora learning ma sanga define kara hai. Learning awal ma define kara hai understanding sara. then sexual retention, for example, yeah, recalling sara, and then applicability. Whatever I have learned, practically I have to apply. Is it? So learning simply means understanding, better retention, recalling, and better applicability. Now all these are known as your D. D here means dimension. Is it? So understanding is a one dimension, recalling or retention is another dimension. Is it? And application is, for example, another dimension. Each dimension, it means understanding, I have divided into different two elements. Here E mean element. Ab gora understanding. Initially I told you understanding matlab da de answer questions correctly. Ya correctly give the answers. Next element, that is give appropriate example. Ab retention. Retention means recall. Is it? Retain, maintain साथल. अब recall material after some lapse of time. मतलब जब सूरा टाइम परे, for example, इलम चेकम दे आहा जमा माज़ू की retain की देशी. Is it? That is known as the retention quality. उस next applicability. Is it? Whatever I have learned, how practically I will apply. Now again I have divided into two elements. Is it? Number one, solve problems applying concept understood and recalled. Yodash wala. Integrate with other relevant materials. So what I did, that I took clear the variable learning, then I divided into three dimensions. Is it? And then each dimension I have divided into different elements. So that process, that where a single subject, a single concept or construct is divided into dimension and element, so such whole process is known as your definition, or simply operational definition. Is it? The process chikam de beta munga vayu operational definition. Us next day, as I told you, so once you will get the element, so now upon each element you have to make the statements, you have to develop the questions. Is it? Sanga chi shuru ke masastu kana, do you like math? Yes or no? No, do you like math? The statement sarangi ragale de. The statement chikam de saishwa now paddi mani barasi tasula. Like answer question correctly. For example, each employee is giving answer correctly, yes or no. Now we have make the question. It is ready to develop the question over each element. So the whole process is simply known as your problem definition. Hope inshallah usko bata sola your idea clear shawi hummi. Gora da yo bal example de seshwa book na mera khaste de. Now our major concept is stress. I have divided stress into three dimensions: physical tension, emotional or psychological tension, and another dimension, that is mental tension. Seshwa ab gori beche mental chikam de seshwa the further divide shave, sorry, physical chikam de the further divide shave de could be measured by blood pressure or pulse rate, nabs rate chikam de. Us emotional या psychological tension chikam de the furtherly divide shave de sexual dimensions ke, one is nervousness, one is anxiety parishani, and one is fear. Seshwa us har yo chikam de seshwa da de element thi gora extend to sleepiness, sweating, and stomach upset. And next we have clear the anxiety and the fear as well. Then we have the mental tension. Us mental tension chikam de the headache sara, fatigue sara, confusion sara, and making unusual number of mistakes. Seshwa now here stress mung sara yo variable we have divided into three dimensions. Then again psychological tension is divided into three dimensions, and upon each dimension we make different, for example, elements. Us har yo element mane we have to develop clear a statement, we have to develop a question. Sanga bu question jodo. Now look at here. Kore us now your question jod show. To what extent do you feel anxious and nervousness? Now if you notice gora anxious and nervousness gora din raagari. One is nervousness. Anxious mean anxiety. Seshwa us ande mane ma question e jodi kare. Zana na minne di jodi kari. Gora how often do you feel unduly pressured by the event that are happening in your life? Us last time gora pressure charta de. Definitely daltama cheta pressure hum likale de. Here it is. Sorry. Yeah, that is the fear, pressure. Is it? But then, for example, now your question jod karo. Now next over, how often are you confused by the situation surrounding you? Uskura dalta de confusion. Is it? Confusion situation ke. Nugura confusion chikam de da gade. Da yo element de. But then yo question jod karo. Saishwa questionnaire ke. hope us पर लगे तासुला idea इंशाल्लाह clear शवी ही चे अवल मा चूक रला first I have clear took concept is it and then stress was a concept. Then I made it clear, I split up into different dimensions, and then on each dimension I made different elements, and now upon each element now I am going to construct clear develop different questions or statements. Now उस तासु तैयार शो करल चे शुरू की मास सास्ता हुए जो do you like math, that was a question. Uskura that tool sasu sara questionary. The question is sara rale. We have developed these questions with the process of operational definition. No uskure how frequently have you had headache or stomach upset during the past 4 weeks? If you notice gura headache and stomach upset. If you notice gura dwada dal tashtari. That is tasu sara headache. Here is headache. Adimane ma you question jodko. And stomach upset, that is tasu stomach upset. Every element clear, upon every element now I am constructing developing the different questions. Next question, how often do you feel that the demands on you are overwhelming? How often has your blood pressure shoot up during the past 6 months? Gura blood pressure chede da ham yo elemento. Yo question jod karo. How well do you sleep at night? Do you ever feel that you are going to have a nervous breakdown? And clear, are you troubled by your hands sweating so that you feel dumb and clammy? And do you wake up rested in the morning? So that questions, that tool mungsara, all these are known as your statements. Is it that tools तासु statement थी, that tools तासु question थी, चे कम मुंगा हर यो element माने जोड़े करी थी, and we got these questions clear from the operational definition method. Now initially I told you the operational definition, it is a technique, it is a method that with the help of which we will find out that we will measure a variable, and that variable which is subject to in nature, we will divide that clear into different dimensions, that each dimension will cover clear the different elements, and upon each element we will make the different questions. Kura yo bulk question de, yo bulk example de, just to make your idea clear. Kura enriched job. Ab das tasu sara yo construct de. Ab the dimensions come the, it has clear the following dimension: offer challenges, provide autonomy, matlab power, uses all the skills of the workers, offers a whole job and not framed and worked, या fragmented work, offers a sense of meaningfulness, and offers feedback. Is it? अब now दीदी किसी different elements ही सही हुआ, हर यो element माने चाहिए या dimension माने चाहिए उस मुंगा question ही जोड़ी करी दी. Like look at here, to what extent do you find your job challenging? To what extent does your job use all the skills and knowledge? Up to what extent does your job permit you to task from beginning to end, instead of only doing fragmented piece of the task? How repetitious are your duties? How much opportunity do you have to do a job from beginning to end? Up to what extent do you find out how well you are doing on the job as you are working? How meaningful is the work you do in the sense of it making a contribution to society? To what extent do you feel that you are doing something worthwhile clear on your job? How good do you feel about the challenges that your job offers? How much are you left on your on your own to do your work? How much opportunity do you have to do number of different things? And how significant, important to others is the work you do? Again, what we happen, again, simply I took clear a variable, a constant that is enriched of, and then we make clear or split up into different dimensions, and upon each dimension or each element we divide it clear into different elements, and upon each element or dimension we make different questions. Is it? So that process is simply known as your operational definition. Now usme inshallah lagata sula idea clear shawi chikala when I explained initially say sho chikala ma shuru ke tasu da way अब तसुला उस दलता explain कमा चुगुरा operational definition चिकम दे सही हुआ that basically that comes to whatever the question we have developed here, that do you like the subject math, the question, the statement it comes clear with the help of or through the help of operational definition. And operational definition it is simply a method with the help of which we will be able to measure a variable. And how we will able to measure a variable, because it divides the whole variable into different dimensions and into different elements. So once we have elements, so then we have to make clear or develop the questions or behavior or statement upon each element, and this statement clear is simply known as our question. Hope inshallah now a bit idea will be clear. Now us ratun ke slidon ke inshallah lecture okay, I'll explain the next part, which is yes or no part, and that is simply known as your scaling part. So measurement of variables, it is done with the help of operational definition and with the help of scaling method. Operational definition clear. Or now inshallah in next lecture I'll explain the scaling method, which is basically a technique with the help of which we will measure clear the statement. Hope inshallah a bit idea will be clear. Thank you so much.